everyone, William here. I just had another great conversation with another guest. Would you like to come in and listen in on the conversation we had? By the way, feel free to share it with anyone you feel may find it of interest. Come on, let's go listen in now.
In my studio and having a conversation with me.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I understand that you had a picture framing business. Mm-hmm. And what was the name of the business that you had?
It was called Timeless Framing by Rosanna, and I ran it for about 17 years. I had anywhere between 2 and 4 employees at the time, and it was a lovely business to run, yeah.
Locally here in Hamilton?
Yes, in Hamilton, yeah.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And the relationships that this is one of the questions I like to ask people, is the relationships that you built with your employees and with the people in the community, how did that affect your business? How helpful was that in your business with referrals, et cetera?
Right. Well, I think that a lot of my clients honestly followed me from a previous work experience. So they knew that they could trust me with their work. And when I opened my own business in 1993, they actually then tried to find me, and they found me, and which was lovely because I started a new business with a wonderful clientele, which was very helpful, obviously. As far as employees, I actually was luckily able to have a lot of former employees also come and work with me. So experienced people came to work with me, which really helped out the business a lot. Because when you're opening up a new business in the middle of a recession, it's quite difficult. And I really had very talented people working for me right at the beginning, which was nice. Mm-hmm.
It's almost an art to be able to put framing together and pictures together. Mm-hmm. You've got glass to cut, and it's, exactly. To be able to get into a client's mindset and their design. You can have metal framing, you can have wood framing. There's all, you worked with all those formats.
Yes.
And so how would you build a relationship with a person so that you could actually understand what their needs were and what their expectations were and their style? Mm-hmm.
Well, there were different types of clients. So I really did have the business client, which was either a college that I would do framing for their award ceremonies, or I would have a charitable organizations that I would also do framing for award ceremonies or awards that they would give to their donators of their products. But then I had that client that might bring in their needlework to be framed, something sentimental, or family photos, or wedding photos, or a degree that they needed to frame. So it was lovely in that my job or what I did every day was different every day and unique every day, and every customer was unique and every project was unique. So there are challenges with that, but then on the other hand, it certainly wasn't a dull career to be in, because every day I would assess what the customer needed, and I made sure that they got what they needed, considering their budget and really their decor, because a lot of it had to do with the decor also. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It must have been interesting to see some of the products people would bring into you, because they would be one of a kinds that you would be dealing with, especially if it was needlepoint from great grandma or whatever the case may be, and the tender and gentleness that you'd need to use with some of those products, and being able to be that skilled with it must have been a lot of fun.
It was fun. Again, I was North American certified, so I did have some conservation certification behind me, because I did really handle artifacts at times. Real artifacts. So you really do need to know how to handle certain objects. But then on the other hand, I remember framing a hubcap from a car accident, where a family actually survived a car accident driving up north in the winter. And the husband asked me to frame it as a gift to his wife, because she was driving the car, and she steered them out of a serious situation. They were still in the accident, but they all survived, the mom, dad, and the 2 kids. So I've framed a lot of unique items, from artifacts to wonderfully, I actually did a lot of framing for galleries. So I did touch Picasso's I did work with originals. So that was wonderful. And then special objects that customers brought in. So you had to be very careful. You had to have a staff that knew how to handle things, how to, properly. And I was lucky because, like I said, that my employees they had the knowledge too. So they really did help me make sure that the business was at the level it should be. And it was quite a fun time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was it that of all the things that are out there to do in business, what was it that drew you to picture framing versus something else?
Well, I studied interior design at Sheridan College and at Mohawk College, and was doing some consulting. But as a student, I worked in a company part-time, and it was a great place to begin because picture framing runs in line with interior design. The moldings will change according to design changes throughout time, and so it was logical for me to be there. And I also was a tour guide at the art gallery, so in Hamilton. So I had a lot of that art background. So I did work for a company for 8 years and was a sales manager, and then moved from that to owning my own business right in the middle of the recession. The company closed, and I opened up when everyone was closing. So many picture framing companies were closing in 1993, and I opened in 1993. So it was a strange situation, but it was a challenge in the beginning. Capital was scarce to buy all this equipment. With picture framing, you need to have equipment to run the company properly. And I really didn't have any capital at the time. My husband and I had a house that we had just purchased, so we had a lot invested in the house. And so with the new business, my husband built a lot of the fixtures, and I got a loan for the equipment, and started up with my wonderful clients that did follow me, which was really nice. And again, that was a godsend, that I did have clients that knew of my work ethic and followed me to my new business.
So fortunately for you, during the recession, I know Warren Buffett and Branson, they all talk about recessions are a great time to start a business because you're getting things at cut rate prices to start your business up and not having capital. So you utilized some creative ways, and you had some support from knowing that you had some clients, knowing the business to help you get started. It's one of the things that I'd like to do here is be able to give people a little bit of insight who are a little nervous about starting any kind of business as to how what kept you motivated, what keeps you going, the little things that continue to allow you to press forward when times get a little bit tough, which they do. What were some of the things that would keep you going?
Well, to begin with, I was raised in a family where my dad owned a business my whole life. So I knew the ups and downs of running a business, the really good times and the really, really, really bad times. So I was conditioned. So, if I were to give anyone advice, I would think that maybe they would need to interview or talk to someone who runs a business right now and really ask those questions. What are the challenges? I live those challenges with my dad owning a business. And so I was ready. I really could handle it myself. In the beginning, a lot of the challenges were the capital. So getting the capital to buy the equipment was a challenge. And at the time during a recession, there was really no money out there to be given to anyone. So that was a challenge. But with the combination of my husband and I both having experience, we were able to get a small loan and purchase the equipment. So that really helped, and it was our combined experience. But I think for me, it was understanding what it means to run a business, which is a lot of hard work, accepting that there will be downtimes, really enjoying the good times. There will be good times. There will be a good cash flow coming in. So it's interviewing someone or talking to someone or listening to an interview like this is a really great way to help someone who's thinking about opening up a new business. another little thing, Bill, I just wanted to bring to your attention because one of my struggles was bookkeeping. You know, I was a great picture framer.
Paperwork.
I was yeah, exactly.
Who loves paperwork?
Who loves paperwork? I, you know, was certified. I had done it for so many years, but I had a wonderful tax preparer. I still have her. She's wonderful. But the day-to-day paperwork, and in '93, the technology to facilitate your invoices was not there. Now it is. Now you literally can input anything you need to about your client at your first meeting, and that's so important. So, you know, the two things, capital, having some capital, and really taking those extra 30 seconds to input that customer's information the first time you meet them. Because that will save so much paper. Because I enjoyed what I did, you know, I enjoyed picture framing, the art of that. But unfortunately, a lot of that wonderful time was left to my employees because I was doing the paperwork. And really, I loved framing. And I mean, I used to saw every day. I had my safety glasses, my shop coat. I loved it. But I was doing a lot of paperwork. So that cost to hire someone to come in once a week, it's worth it. It's worth it. If you're disciplined enough to, you know, one night a week, just focus on the paperwork, do it. Or use the technology today to input everything right away, and it would just make life a lot easier.
Yeah,
you know.
paperwork is one of the struggles. I remember speaking to one of my previous guests, and the comment was they loved 20% of what they were doing. The other 80% was the things that they had to do in order to be able to do the 20%. And the 20% was worth the 80%. That's what kept them doing it. So you've got the paperwork, you've got to purchase from people, and all those things aren't necessarily the things that you want to experience. It's not the art of framing. It is part of framing.
Running the business.
Running the business, right? So, and one of the other things the previous guest that brought to mind, which you brought to my attention again, for any viewers out there, would be get into a business as a employee, experience it, to see if it's something that you enjoy doing. You obviously got into, it could have been something else, but because you found it right away, and it was something you enjoyed, and you thought, oh, and all the other things fall into place, which was great for you. So,
yes, it did work out.
So, yeah, that's excellent.
Yes.
Sure. And having a bit of a bankroll behind you if you're thinking about going into business. How important, what would be your advice on something like that, Rosanna?
Well, it really, in my opinion, is really important to have some capital behind you. I opened with zero capital during recession, and I had to go and apply for that loan, and that was a tricky time for me. I really, it was touch and go, and I'll be honest, at the time, the only reason that I was allowed, it was called a youth venture loan back in 1993. I was young enough to get it, and because my husband and I both knew the business, we were given that loan, or I was given that loan. But I think when you have those quieter times, you know, and knowing that you have some capital in the bank, it just makes it easier. And that's a common statement that we would all know. Any time, personally, if we have those savings in the bank, it makes it easier for us. But when you're opening a business, there can really be some sharp dives. And if you don't have, and I'm not going to say a number because it's all relative to the business you're in. For me, it should have been at least $40,000 in the bank. That was what I should have had in the bank.
As a cushion.
As a cushion to manage
the bad times, the
bad
down
times, the good times.
Needing extra product before you could sell it.
Absolutely. More advertising or whatever I need to do to generate more business. So I really do recommend to people who do ask me about opening a business to think about that. Think about the capital that they should have, and really keep that as a separate nest egg for that. And again, it's still part of an investment in your business, so that's really important.
Yeah, sure. Well, you mentioned one of our conversations before about there are different types of business. There's business where you sell products.
Yes.
And there's a business where you sell a product and a service.
Yes.
And there's a business where you sell a service.
Exactly.
And you were kind of in the product service
Exactly. Product service combination.
Because
I would literally go out to businesses or offices and hang pictures as a service for office buildings. I did that quite often. But I also sold a finished product, which would be basically multiple products coming together to make up one finished product. So, but as I was mentioning to you, there's different levels of degree of difficulty in each one of those areas, right? So if it's service oriented, then it's going to be a little bit easier for you because your costs are lower. You don't have to rely on those vendors to sell you a product, which again then reduces the stress maybe of waiting for a vendor to get you a product. So there's all those little things you have to think about. But again, it depends on the business you're in. If you are doing a creative business, usually there are components that you have to put together, so you do have to buy from a supplier. But service-oriented businesses can be a little bit easier because it's really yourself that you're selling, and customers then are relying on you for your opinion or the knowledge that you have.
Yeah, and you really need to have a conversation with your client as to what their expectations are. So when you do purchase product and you put something together or assemble it, it's not, well, that's not what I said, because you weren't paying attention. Now you're stuck with product and you've utilized your time
and actually,
pretty ineffectively.
That's right, Bill. And in the picture framing industry, from my experience of knowing a lot of picture framers and myself, you never took payment ahead of time. Most picture framers do not do that. I'm going to say the honorable picture framers don't do that. They have a customer drops off something very special to me, I then have to frame it, and then when they come to pick it up, that's when they pay for their finished assembled product. So again, that evaluation of the customer's needs is so important. Making sure you know what their budget is and what their decor is like, and are they giving it as a gift, or is it for their home, or is it for a degree to be framed for their child, or their, it's really important. That really isn't something that someone's going to pick a picture off the wall and check, but it really was word of mouth, and people being able to trust you with something valuable. This is the key. They can trust you with getting the job done on time, but it's really something valuable. There may only be one of the items that you're framing, and they need to be able to leave it with you and trust that it's going to be there when they come back. I did have separate insurance also for, and that's another thing, insurance, business insurance. I did have, of course, your standard business insurance, but I had a separate one for all the artifacts that I had to have in my business.
Yeah, so another part of cost of doing business. Cost
of doing business, right? Yeah. So, but really, I donated a lot to different organizations, so that helped with my profile in the community.
Sure.
But really, it was mostly just word of mouth and knowing that, and also having a good relationship with other framers. That's an important thing too. They're competition, but they're also our friends. So if you know that a framer is going to be able to support you at a time that you may need their help, that's a nice thing too. So,
well, it sounds like you had a young family at the same time you were trying to run this business.
Yes.
And how would you juggle the mom, businesswoman role with your family?
It was challenging, very challenging. When you run a business, at that time, women or men did not get maternity leave. So I paid into it all my whole life because I had worked for other companies, and I didn't get that opportunity. So what I really had to do was modify staffing and myself. So I had more staff during that time and myself there. At times I brought the children. It was kind of fun for the kids, but I try to be very professional. So for me to have my kids there was a bit of a challenge for me, not necessarily my customers, but for me. But I had to sometimes have my kids there, and that was fine. They grew up in a business too, just as I did with my dad, right? So, but I hope things change for business owners in the future. I'm not sure if things have changed right now where you can pay into a maternity leave where you can actually take a little bit of time off to support your business, because small businesses do really keep the economy going, and they're so important for Hamilton's economy.
Yeah. Well, currently they have like compensation that you have to pay into, and you have to be insured for those kind of things. I'm sure there are packages out there that you could purchase from an insurance
Well, there's
company.
liability insurance, which I did have. I had
Yeah.
I had so much. That's the one thing with business. You have so many different types of insurance, but I had to have that special insurance for the artwork that I had in my business. But a lot of times, liability insurance doesn't really cover having children. So you have to modify, and basically having great employees as your face, behind the counter, and then being able to come in maybe later on in the evening. I would come in with the kids and be able to do some work, after the store was closed. So it's just modifying the way the business runs during that time. And again, this is reality. It's a reality that I think I heard not too long ago that over 50% of new businesses that are being opened are being opened by women. So that is a really, it really should force change. Right. Change in how support for the business owner.
When the need becomes great, that's when there's an exposure to the change, and change generally currently happens.
Exactly. Yeah.
For sure. Very good. You mentioned the story of the hubcap, which is a great story. So you must have had a lot of relationships that I go to that again, because relationships seem to be so key in anybody's business, not just because it helps you grow a business, but it keeps you in business when people are constantly not just referring, but just the friendships. When people walk by, stop into the store, have something else from their now they've got a grandchild and they want something done with that. So there's always this extension that continually grows from the relationships that you build with people.
It is like that, Bill. I really I had so many repeat customers, and actually last week I met one of my clients in a fish and chips shop, and we looked at each other, and she's now in a new industry, and and she ran out to her car and got her card, and I probably have it in my purse today, and she gave me a hug, and it was a wonderful the realization that we had that bond at that time, which we don't have now. And it was I had so many customers like that, so many customers like that trusted me with their work, explained to me what they were bringing in, and hopefully I was able to give them what they needed, and also, have that wonderful relationship with them too, So you're right, Bill. It's really important.
So someone looking for a place to do framing for them, what would be, if I wanted to go get something framed, what would, and it meant a lot to me, what would be the things that I'd want to see from the person
You're working with.
I'm working with, like the identification of their certifications and those sort of things.
So really, it's knowledge, right? If they are going to give you some suggestions, you should be able to pick up if they have the knowledge that you want them to have. There's just typical framing of posters and things like that, degrees or certificates. But when you have something special, when you bring something special, and they should be able to give you some real suggestions and recommendations on how to frame that special piece. But it's also the environment. So if they have a shop that's friendly, their staff is friendly, they care about you, they act like it's really important for them to do their best for you. That's what's important. And I mean, there are a lot of framers in the city that are really like that. They're nice people who care about their clients, and I mean, that's how I base my business. Honesty, honesty, and being able to honor what my client needed. It's very important.
So the care with which they handle what you have,
Yes.
they talk about body language, I guess that would be part of a body language. The
It
care
is,
with
it
which
is
they,
body
and the
language.
questions that they asked you would certainly
Yes.
tell you a little bit about
Exactly.
how they would
There
feel
are,
about that.
certifications as I had. I had a North American certification, which is quite difficult to get, I'll be honest. And so if they had that on the wall, and not just from a specific company, like it's a North American organization, the Professional Picture Framers Association, if they had that certificate, you know that they've gone through some rigorous testing, gone to some place in Toronto or BC or New York and done a formal test. And it's like an accreditation that's very good to have.
Right, so that's a credential to look for if you're really
Absolutely.
serious about
Yes.
something and
Yeah.
you're very connected to whatever it is that you want to
Exactly.
get done and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yes.
You have been an employee and you've been an employer and you've had
Absolutely.
your own business.
Yes.
Could you speak just a little bit about how you feel about the differences in those things and how they've impacted you, your family? Sometimes being an employee, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but
No.
Sometimes being an employee gives you that 8 to 5 thing, as it were, and you get to go home and you get to leave it, where if you're in business, you don't. And how those kind of things impacted your life.
Yes, it's really interesting because a lot of business owners that I speak to say they would never work for anyone else. And I've worked for companies, and I've had my own business, and I was raised in a family that ran a business all like for 30 something years. So I've seen a lot of both sides. The industry that you're in is what's going to determine if you feel you're going to succeed. Like for myself, I was purchasing from suppliers. Really had to rely on my suppliers, which was challenging at times, to produce product at my door when I needed it. If it wasn't there, there was a challenge to get the job done. So there's a lot of frustration sometimes with running a business in that you're really relying on others. If it's a service-based business, where it's yourself that you're selling, it's quite a bit easier. You have to be able to sell something wonderful, but if you can do that, it's your own talents that you're selling. So you're not relying too much on anyone else. When you are an employee, from my experience, there are a lot of situations that may be easier, like you mentioned, having children and not having to go. I remember that I was, pregnant and working till 11 o'clock at night trying to get an art show ready for an artist, and that's what you had to do. I had to do that, right, to get the job done. Whereas, as an employee, you usually go into work and you produce what you need to produce, and then you leave.
Deadlines.
Exactly,
You gotta meet them.
right? So I'm really not one to say one is better or not. When I do talk to other business owners and they say that they would never be an employee, I think there's positives in both. I enjoyed having my business. It was wonderful, a great experience. I really built some amazing relationships with my employees, very, very special people, and with customers. And, that was a beautiful thing for me, right? As an employee, it is easier in some respects. You basically, do what you need to do. And the only thing is when you are a business owner, you tend to act as if it's your business when you're working for someone else. So you tend to maybe achieve a little more, which is kind of a nice thing,
Especially for the business owner.
For the business owner, right?
Right.
So I really do look right now as an employee, let's say for instance, that what I'm doing needs to be as good as I would have done in my own business. Because honestly, my business was me, and I really could not honor the customer. But that's how I was raised by my dad. So
Your habits follow you.
That's exactly
So it just
it.
becomes a habit.
Yes.
It's just a habitual
Yes.
way of doing business,
Exactly.
whether it's for you or for yourself or for someone else.
Exactly.
And it tends to follow you and whatnot.
So there's pluses and minuses to both. But again, the keys are, for me, I'm capital and help, getting someone to help you with your bookkeeping or managing that really well. Again, they're the key things that I felt held me back a little bit. And valuing the money you pay someone to do your books will then gain you in other ways, because you'll have more time to be with that customer, to talk to that customer and generate more business, not sitting, behind the
Right.
desk working on bookkeeping, right? So, yeah.
So in and of itself, it adds value because it frees your time up.
That's
right?
exactly
Which
what it
great.
is. It frees I mean, a lot of business owners don't want to be out there they like their employees to do, and that's fine, because they will maybe, acknowledge that their employees are very talented. But for me, I really did love doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I should have been more than I was. Right? So, yeah.
And you find people who have the same passion as you, and you hang on to them. It's not a lot of work when you find someone who has the same passion. It's a lot of work to find good employees.
Yes.
But once you find one who has the same passion for you and doesn't want to risk the reward of having your own business, then they get to do what you get to do
Oh, yes.
with a little less risk.
Oh, yes.
And the passion comes out, and those are people you certainly want to hang on to
Yes.
and treat well.
And I think you become more sensitive, Bill. As a business owner, you're more sensitive to your employees. And so when you're out there as an employee on the other side, you tend to be a little more sensitive to who you're working with. I think that really helps. It was a great experience. Yeah.
Very good. Well, Rosanna, I really appreciate you coming out and chatting with me today.
Yeah,
It's
thank
been
you,
a lot of
Bill.
fun, and I hope people can benefit from some
Yeah,
of
I
your
hope-
experiences.
I hope so
And,
also, yes.
Yeah, appreciate it.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
See you again.
See you soon.
Join us. Catch the bug.